Hi, my name is Yufei, and I am a first-year PhD student at Saab Boundless Lab. And so here is like two systems I work with. The first one is how termites make these underground tunnel networks. And then the second one that I want to tell you about today is shepherds and their herds. So I personally really like shepherds, and I have the privilege of apprenticing with some of them in different places. And I have always wondered how we can do some kind of physics-related research with them. Because personally, what I see is the commonality is that they also care about animals, their behavior, their locomotion, and how they modify the physical environment around them. So one of the main problems that I observed when I was working with them was this problem of desertification, which is, so here is like a very healthy grassland, but grasslands are usually in very dry and water limited areas. So there's been more like a trend of desertification where when enough of the plants are removed, the soil turns into sand and it's really hard to reverse. So some of the theory and modeling work that I have seen in this area is actually, there's quite a lot of work on desertification from like Turing patterns and like reaction diffusion type of models. So what they do is usually they write some PDEs of the vegetation and the water and the soil, and then they try to come up with different patterns that kind of look like patterns you would see from satellites. And that's actually the inspiration for a lot of this modeling because you can validate with satellite data. And then there's some other people who say that actually these patterns are not just because of water, but rather animals play a role in modifying these patterns. So here's like an agent-based model of how like an energy-constrained random walker could create a pattern that's also similar to Terra sets. So it's kind of still an open question about like, is it animals? Is it like geomorphic processes? Is it both? So I was wondering, so I guess if you were to kind of imagine like a phase space of this, there is the desertified states, no grass. There is the very healthy grass state, a lot of grass. So the y-axis is biomass. And then usually the x-axis that people use for Turing patterns is rain. So less rain, deserts, more rain, grass. And then there's this pattern regime of transitions between them. And this has been studied a lot. But what I was curious about is, what is the transition? Oh, wait, wrong way. Desertification has been studied a lot. But what is the transition when you're living in a desert and you want to restore it back to a grassland? So the group that I was working with, they're in China and they're like a Tibetan herder group. And what they do is, this is like a desert state and they put seeds into the ground. And then because the sand is very, like seeds would blow away if it's just in sand. So, and they don't have money for tractors. So what they do is they let 1,000 yaks and sheep like run inside of the pasture for a night and fertilize with poop. And then by the morning, usually the seeds are buried. So I guess my question is, what are the physical principles of this process? And then how can we kind of build like a modeling or experiment framework that can allow us to transfer these principles to other pastures with other parameter conditions? And so I guess I just started this project, so I was kind of brainstorming questions that I can do at several different directions. So on the more like pattern formation and pattern transition side, I was thinking a lot about, because there's not a lot of coupled models of animals and vegetation both modifying a landscape. So I guess I was curious about like good places to start. I started playing around with like a continuum grazer model, but it's not really capturing all of the nuances. So right now I'm thinking more on the biomechanics side. So if you really break down the process that they just did, there's like two parts that animals do. One is trampling. So the seeds, they need to be like the thing that they describe is the front hoof, it sweeps like this to push out the sand. And then the back hoof, it goes like, so the sand covers over the seed and that allows the compaction. But then if you trample too much, then like it would also hurt the porosity of the soil. So I guess there's some kind of optimal range. And then grass eating, I don't know how this fits in exactly yet, but different animals eat grass very differently. Some pull and some more like cut. So there's different forces involved. And I was wondering more like, what are the impacts on the roots and the soil porosity structure? And how does that change, like, I guess, the parameters in the model? Yeah. So I was talking to some other researchers. Yeah.
I was wondering if pools and parasites.
Yes. So the seed so initially traditionally herders they migrate seasonally. So a lot of the yaks their hair catches onto sticky seeds, and when they walk from the summer pasture to the winter pasture, they bring all of the seeds to the new pasture. And then also when they eat, they poop, and it's a fertilizer in the seed dispenser. So you can imagine these animals as these farming technologies. But I guess like I haven't thought about this clearly yet, but I was thinking like the one person was telling me that some kinds of plants have more of a like a mat and carpet like morphology to them, and it's better for the highly trampled regions. Somehow these root structures compared to the more deep grass structures is able to resist compaction and resist water runoff. So I was thinking of some simple physical experiments to start, but I am still open to suggestions. Yeah. But yeah, this is mostly it. Thank you.
If there are any cases where you have like a natural experiment where like animals have spontaneously restored some or continuously will restore some desertified landscape or other natural cycles, like maybe migratory animals or something.
Yeah, I think the whole argument that at least the people I know are making is that they're not really doing anything new from tradition. Like if you have seasonal migration of livestock with people, then it would do these cycles of like regeneration and then eating down and then regeneration. But there's less like extreme desertified to grassland cases, which is why they had to adapt their strategies. Yeah.
I was just thinking if there was, some ecosystem that had actually adapted to this sort of cycle, you might be able to gain, some insight into the mechanism. But
wild animals.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. Yeah.
If there's some natural migratory process.
Yeah. I heard bisons in west, southwest. Yeah. I would love to look into it. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a really nice talk. I had a question on your slide 7. You had in one of your list of questions, it said something about like the effect of pulse timing. And I didn't catch like what does that mean in this setting?
Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about it. So one thing that I noticed was that currently a lot of rangeland management, they use this model of like, you assume that like this is the number of animals, this is years. They assume that the animal amount is always constant, but like with seasonal or with like the method I described, they're more doing like a very high intensity pulse and then followed by no grazing and then another pulse. And then this depends either on season or rainfall or other intuition that they have. So they told me that this is more important often than things like what is the distance to water or what is the history of this pasture. So I was thinking maybe there's some temporal thing going on and that correlates with some like weather factors.
Okay, one more question. So when you showed the folks like planting seeds, I was like just curious about the time scale of how long it would take, like how many years do they need to do that in order to get like that, what looks like a desert to a green field?
Yeah.
What is it? Timescales? Yeah.
I'm also trying to learn that, but in general, what they told me is like 3 to 5 years, but then you have to maintain it for longer because it might revert back. Like this process is not really like you just go from here to here and stay there like on its own. So it's like a quite unstable almost. Yeah.
Some of us, sorry. Some of us were talking at one point over coffee about these like lovely experiments with that are used to study earthworm turnover of soil, where like you take a color of sand that's like green sand and you layer it with color red sand and then a white sand and then you do it over again. And then you can basically like put some worms in there and then like see that like it's like you take a picture before and after and you get a sample of like the aggregate impact of turnover at these trajectories. Is there a version of this, like if you're thinking about the sort of physics motivation of this type of work in addition to the practical motivation of the work? I want to know how these trampoline do or do not mix. Was that like a version of a thing you can try or like you're thinking about trying?
I haven't thought about the layered sand, but I was thinking about like other inferences that we can make about the force that they make on the trampoline. And because there's some GPS data that one of our collaborators have. So I was thinking maybe correlating that with soil images, but if it's something more direct like that, then it would be great. Yeah. So I'll look into it. Yeah.
Very good.
Let's thank you, Yufei. Yeah.